I didn't want to do a hard cut this time. I actually really like that song. So I figured I would play it. Start a little early just so I can get it out there within the first 3 minutes. Anyway, hello. Been a while, I suppose. So much has happened recently, and so much continues to do so. But today, I figured, well, with the journey of life meandering, bringing me ever forward towards a destination unimaginable, it might be worthwhile to share with you the experience of putting together a resume. I struggle to describe what it is I do and where it is I've gone, where it is I'm going. So putting that in a document to send to strangers, putting that in a video to share online with the public, might be worthwhile. At the very least, it might be interesting. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to talk about what I've been up to the past few years, how everything in my life has brought me to this moment, and how I am in a very good position to be a valuable asset to creators. Yeah, it should be fun. It should be a good time. Don't really know how else to preface the thing, so why don't we go ahead and jump over here. Okay, that one's okay, but let's try this one. This one's a little better. Almost had it. Alright, well anyway. Hello and welcome. Thank you for existing, first of all. Secondly, thank you for being here. Whether elsewhere in the present moment or at another time in another place. Thank you. I really appreciate it. So, might as well get started. I don't anticipate there will be a ton of people watching this particular thing. Doesn't exactly find favor from the mythical algorithm, but at least it'll be fun to talk about. Alright, so I got that ready. Okay. So, of course, I decided to do this about a week ago. I've been telling people about it, been trying to just think about it, just talk about it, transmute the idea from the inner workings of my mind to the world around me. And this is what I have come across. I wanted to do all of this today, but then I couldn't wait anymore. I didn't want to wait that long because I recently had surgery that I've been recovering from. And I haven't been able to sit at my desk. A large part of the reason it's taken me so long to come back. But anyway, as any good resume begins, we have an overview. In the overview, I attempted to describe my existence, why I'm here, what I'm doing, and how it may prove useful to someone who hopefully has the capacity to collaborate with me, or even more wild, to hire me. That would be ridiculous and incredible. But anyway, overview. It's a summary of my reality. I exist on the frontier of thought, where speculation meets reality and the infinite becomes tangible. I am a creator of multiverses, and through tales of transcendence, have connected them in the endless meta space. I have looked within and beyond our assumed limitations to design games and stories that help my friends and fellow travelers traverse what was once thought to be impossible. And, after realizing my experiences have made me well equipped to do so, I'd like to join your journey. I've got a few places in mind. I'm not going to talk a lot about that whole side of things, but I am going to try to build on this framework that I have here. So obviously in the beginning, we can have like contact information, which I'm not going to put on this video. But I might make a version of my resume available on my Patreon, maybe even over on Facebook. I don't know. I'm relearning how to use Facebook now because a lot of my old friends and family are on it. Seems like from another life, honestly. But anyway, that's the overview. Now, I figure the rest of the information, to build upon this introduction, the rest of it should focus on two main things. The first are the projects that I have developed and am developing. The second, my experience related to this kind of thing. Now, I don't have, the idea is to try to prove in some way that I would be a good addition to a team, whichever team may find my particular perspective useful. So that is like the core focus of the resume. I have experienced things, and I have learned things, and I have invented things that would be beneficial to the framework of a video game. I could do writing in a lot of different ways. I've written D&D campaigns, fictional novels, I've written plays, and short films, and all sorts of things. I didn't grow up and live the life of a writer in the conventional sense. So I don't have friends and contacts and any insight into how any of this works. I don't have that. But I do have ideas and experiences through meandering along what seemed like an arbitrary course in life. I've ultimately acquired, accumulated, and invented a very diverse perspective. And I think that is shown most in the projects that I have worked on. So obviously, the first one, the biggest one so far, is the Multiverse of Aether. If you've never heard of that before, I'm going to try to explain it. The Multiverse of Aether is an infinite TTRPG campaign. It's a tabletop role-playing game. So me and my friends get together. I set the scene, determine the world, describe everything and the consequences of what they do. They play characters along a grand adventure towards revelation and revolution. It's very bold, aspirational perhaps. But it's given me a lot of experience with a lot of different things. The past few years now, I've been working at points full-time, at others part-time, running games of the Multiverse of Aether as part of my career, as part of my job. During that, I encountered a lot of different perspectives and ideas and ways of being, and there are a few trends that I noticed that I think are particularly interesting. I'm not going to get too much into that. That's going to be part of another project that I'm working on. So keep an eye out for that. It's called Dismantling the Capitalist Paradigm, in case you were wondering. That is not on here because I'm only in the brainstorming part of things. Well, no, I have an outline, and okay, I'm fairly into the process, I'm now realizing. But anyway, the Multiverse of Aether is a collaborative storytelling experience. Yes, I create the worlds, the multiverse, the meta-multiverse, everything involved. I create the characters that the players interact with. I create the situations, and I guide them along the adventure, which I only have one table now. I had 5 at once a while ago. That comes up later in my resume, but I only have one now, and this particular story has been going on for 2 years? I don't quite remember. Multiple years, anyway. No, probably like maybe even 3 years now. I'm gonna have to look into that because that seems like an important detail. But anyway, I only have the one game. It's not open to the public. I've kind of retired from GMing, game mastering, being a story guide online. Not really something I'm interested in doing long term. I gained a lot from it, a lot of perspective, a lot of information, but not keeping it up. But the collaborative nature of it means that I don't know what's going to happen. The player input, the things that the other people do, so immensely impactful in the story and in the experience that I have to come up with a reaction to everything. Well, I guess that's the thing that I've noticed is I don't actually have to do that. I have seen other people doing what I do, kind of saying this is what it is, and now you get to listen to me talk. They like to tell stories, that kind of thing. But I find it more challenging and more interesting to make space for other people. So I never know what's going to happen. The way that that whole experience is played out is once a week, almost every week. We're talking like missing 4, maybe 5 weeks out of an entire year. We meet for 3 hours for new content, the next step, the next thing. I've been doing that. I think it has been 3 years because it was the end of. No, it's been 2 years. Okay. Yeah, the end of 21, I started it, so 2 years then. Yeah. Wait, no. I'm not doing math. This isn't math time anyway. It's been going on for a while. Short story for some. That's 3 years, says my friend. Yes, thank you. Thank you for doing that for me. Yeah, 3 years, I guess. But anyway, you could do the math on that one too. That's hundreds of hours of game time, of story. And I think out of everybody in the group, I'm the one who remembers the most, which I think is frankly impressive. I don't know how I do that, especially back in the day when I was running 5 of the same story, but 5 different instances of it that were all different from each other. And I only made a mistake once, and I remember that mistake. I thought a group had talked to somebody at a bar, but they hadn't. It was a different group. But anyway, so collaborative storytelling, adapting to player decisions and input, I guess. Decisions, input, they are different things. So yeah, being adaptable. That's the main thing with collaborative storytelling. I also, along the way, because I've been working on this for at least, 5 or more years now, I've built a multiverse, which are a few words that don't quite capture the profundity of the action. It's as if I made what we know as reality. Maybe not nearly as detailed. Like, I don't know about your friend's recent visit to the doctor, for example. That's not written down. It's not part of my story anyway. But I've made a world with people, a society, cities, villages, emotions, realities, and then extrapolated and expanded, making other planes of existence with their own rules, their own societies, their own ideas and beliefs. Took that even further into the theoretical. Expanded on not only what it means to be a person, but what it means to be a person within the bounds of a greater context. And made that real for each random person the party came across over the past few years. I made a creation theory. I made a storyline where you explore the words of creation, where you realize that you not only have the power to manifest and to create, to invent the reality you want to see, you always have. I made deities, gods, a whole mythology, with multiple tiers as well, which was intentional to illustrate how even the transcendent consciousness we imagine isn't too far from what we experience. connections. That everything is interconnected, relatable. How I sum that up in a resume, I'm not entirely sure. Let's see here. Planes, creation, interconnected consciousness, societies. I don't know. That's kind of just the idea. That's generally what I'm going for. And then there's the fact that I have tried to count it. I always get a little mixed up with some things, but I have created and performed hundreds of named NPCs and even more unnamed NPCs, although some of them are kind of in between those two categories, because I think I had like an estate that was guarded by a collection of guards who had code names. It was like UG1, UG2, UG3, and that stood for Unnamed Guard 1. But I don't know. I don't know if that counts. I don't know what counts. But anyway, hundreds of named NPCs, and those have discrete and unique perspectives and beliefs and personalities. Because I don't do borrowing accents to distinguish between races and characters. That has always seemed weird to me. I don't do that. But even though most of my characters sound like me doing a character, you can tell that they are discrete, that they are different from each other. Occasionally, I've had to have conversations between NPCs, which are non-player characters. Those are the people that I share with myself, and then I'll have to use their energies, their personalities, their emotional states, the things they believe in, the ways they express themselves, to distinguish between them, rather than saying, this person is talking now, okay, now this person is talking now. Just makes it more fun, I guess. Less awkward, less cumbersome. But yeah, hundreds, which it was not the case. My friend says, and you're so good at making them unique. Yeah, I think the example that comes to my mind the most is probably like the trickiest thing I've had to do in terms of embodying an NPC and speaking as them. Let me try to summarize this. In order to dismantle the capitalist patriarchy, we had to go to a party at the headquarters of the nation's corporate entity, aside from the government, and get information so we could break into the vault. While we were at the party, we attended a seance, which included a tarot reading. So for that, I made two characters. One had already been in the campaign before. The other one was new. So the first one was the estate owner that we stole from. The second was the person that the estate owner hired. So, of course, in this culture that I created, mirrored perhaps, it was more important for the reader, the paranormal investigator, to appeal to the sensibilities of their employer than it was to genuinely engage with the activity. So as we were going along in this experience, we were easily able to discover that this person had no idea what they were doing. They were putting on a show. And when we got to the tarot reading, it was really tricky, because what I had to do was, knowing it was for the group. And if you don't know what a tarot reading is, it's when you, well, there are a lot of ways to do it, but the way I was doing it was I was taking a spread, which is like a list of prompts or questions arranged in a particular pattern. You have a deck of cards which have various things on them with metaphorical significance, and then you spread them out to match the pattern, and then you flip them to see what information you're able to divine from it. So what I had to do was I had to take what I knew about the party, take what I knew about the campaign, the world, the employer, the employee, the situation, and use that to deliver not my interpretation of the tarot reading, but the employee's interpretation of the tarot reading. And going through all of those levels of discrete consciousness and all of those levels of awareness to arrive at what would be said by this particular person in this particular place. It was a lot of fun, but it was really tricky too. Ultimately, I think it went really well. Everybody seemed to respond very well to it. They loved it. I think they even had me do like another tarot reading, just because it was so much fun. But that's kind of, it's hard to explain in brief words exactly the significance of the things that I have done, but I think that's a good example. I forget what his name was though. Eric, the reader. I'll put that as the example. Eric the reader. So I have experience with being in the midst of stories, which is exactly what you're doing when you're playing a video game, and I imagine what you're doing when you're writing one. I have made video games, but I'll get to that a little later. So that's on the list down here as well. But anyway, endless adaptable quest line. That is not an understatement. It literally could go on forever. I had to make We Are Gods. That's the next point here. I had to make a whole new game because we were playing it in Dungeons and Dragons, but that game is far too limiting, far too specific, and far too confusing. And not only that, it has the audacity of having a level cap. So I had to make something that scales infinitely with unlimited potential while still having enough mechanics and ideas to be helpful while you're going through the experience. So I had to make up a game to continue telling this story, basically. I had to redefine the rules. But yeah, endless and adaptable. The consequences of the player actions are tangible and memorable, I think, in the experience of the game. I did try to have some more of my friends join the audience, maybe even join the chat, but it's a busy time of year, and they're not really the ones to be on Twitch much anyway. Another situation of me entering spaces that I don't have much experience with. But here I am streaming on Twitch. And then putting up on YouTube. I don't know YouTubers. I don't know Twitch streamers. I'm just trying to exist. But anyway, endless adaptable. Player choice is tangible. That's like a main thing there. Player choice is tangible. And then because it's endless, always new content. Not content. No, content. Always new content. Every single week I have something new for us. So I'm used to writing to a deadline. I'm very used to that. I've been doing this for years. Coming up with 3 hours of content every week. At least 3 hours, because I was doing the 5 tables, so that was 15 hours of game content every single week for a very long time. I ended up leaving that not because I couldn't keep up with it, but because I was working with someone who had very strange ideas about how capitalism should work. and I was suffering because of them. So obviously I couldn't do that anymore, so I left. Again, capitalism. It's interesting. Well, you might notice here, if you're looking at the screen and are capable of determining what these characters mean, that it says exist, change, observe, and connect. This is the creation theory that I created. These are the first 4 words of creation. So in the beginning, nothing. Then the multiverse existed. It began. Then it began to change over time. And over time, with the discrete instance of past, present, and future, the multiverse gained the capacity to observe, to look back, and to grow. And then it began to connect. And this pattern continued to persist, as it does in our lives as well. In every present moment, we exist with the lives that we've had leading us here. Time passes, we change, we observe, we learn more, we connect more, and in the next moment, we exist again in a new beginning. The recycling of consciousness is incredible. As I'm sure if by some incredible chance someone who once knew me is watching this, I'm sure you've experienced a similar journey. Changing and connecting. If that ever happens, I don't know. The world is so curious. I really enjoy it. But the question is, what to say about creating the words of creation? Transmuting insight into world building and game mechanics. Stories with a purpose. Compelling narratives of growth. How about that? Those are interesting things to say about creating a creation theory that is still relevant. Really, I'm just writing down things that I'm gonna go through and remake all of this and set it up, make it look fancy before I start submitting it. This stream is just to show you what I've been up to give you a chance to hang out with me and my energy as I talk about the things that I find purpose in. But the actual final product is going to be for a slightly different application. And of course, if you happen to be watching this and you're looking to hire me, well, I think that's incredible. That's unexpected, but brilliant. And I hope you enjoy it. But if not, still, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy hanging out, because now I'm going to talk a bit about We Are Gods, because honestly, I'm trying to balance describing the infinite detail of my lived reality with summarizing insight in a productive and efficient way. So while I could go on into every detail of the multiverse of Aether, I think these points really capture the big benefit of having had this experience, knowing that I can adapt to other people's ideas, knowing that I can build multiverses and the meta multiverse, which I am going to talk about with We Are Gods, creating hundreds of unique and distinct NPCs with their own personal realities, their own personalities, writing new content endlessly and adapting to the impact of the players, and then transmuting insight into world building and game mechanics. So taking what I know of my lived reality and putting it into words. Not only words, but stories. Not only stories, but games. It's exactly what I want to do. And obviously, I've been doing it for years. The next thing I want to talk about is We Are Gods. Now, if you don't know what We Are Gods is, it is available right now for you to download to look at on my Patreon for free at Darian Thomas, which I'll write here. In case you can see that and you want to follow it because you haven't already. That is there for you. We Are Gods is an original one-page TTRPG. The manual is 70 pages long, but I wrote it to help people get into it and to understand how to grow with it. So a lot of the detail is like little stories about how to use the game, explanations of the meaning of different things, but it also includes a single page with all of the rules outlined. There are optional rules as well, but that's for a later point. So the benefit of having an original one-page TTRPG is efficiently summarizing infinite gameplay potential. Now, the design philosophy for the game wasn't to, we'll talk about some other examples real quick. Like Dungeons and Dragons is a game made for a classic fantasy setting where you have like prescripted roles to play, where you have abilities that you can gain access to. There's so many mechanics to it, so many layers and so many details, and I've seen that the main appeal of that kind of thing is, one, you don't have to think too hard because it's there for you. Your options are outlined. But two, I was going to say it's easier to get into, but it actually isn't. Because there's so much to it, the barrier for entry is massive. They have textbooks that you have to read in order to get into the game. But it's made for that classic fantasy, you have a role to play kind of thing. If we look at another one, Call of Cthulhu, for example, that one is made for a specific playstyle, a specific setting. And it has classes and abilities and all sorts of things. If we look at Lasers and Feelings, another one-page TTRPG, that one has roles for you to play, but they're more of an aesthetic than anything. It's got the mechanics boiled down to one die, a d6, multiple d6s, but still, just a d6 you have to worry about. One stat. So it's very minimal, but it is also designed specifically for a sci-fi experience. We Are Gods is a single page with only one die that you have to worry about, a d20. It's got 4 stats and 1 skill that you're really good at. You can choose which one that is. It has no limitations on character design, nothing like that. It's just that one stat that you got to worry about, and then adding points. Pretty much it. And you only have 1 die to use. This one also includes infinite scaling. So whereas other games either don't scale or have a limit to their scaling, like Dungeons and Dragons ending at level 20, there are a few ways to work around that, but they're not nearly as common, I'd say. We Are Gods, you could have a modifier of 3 billion in a score. You could do that. 4 quadrillion, you could do that as well. It's got a whole system for that. I'm not going to get into the details of that too much. You can, again, check it out at patreon.com/Darian Thomas. I've got a collection there with all of the We Are Gods content. It's got the manual and character sheets, fillable PDFs. It's got stuff you can print out. It's got some cool backgrounds for your devices and whatnot as well. I'm using one, which I could probably... No, I'm not going to do that. That would take too much time. I could probably show you at some point. Maybe after all of this. But anyway, summarizing infinite gameplay potential. Because We Are Gods also doesn't have a strict aesthetic. You can play it with any setting, with any style. You can even change the rules. It's got a a flexible rule system where you can add more, basically, add whatever you want. But the limitless storytelling potential really shines in the canon setting, which is in the meta space, in the meta multiverse, between multiverses, where infinity exists undeniably, where every story is possible. The curator designs an experience for a god. So if you wanted to play a post-apocalyptic storyline in a wasteland of sorts, you could do that. You wanted to play, play as your pet going on an adventure in your neighborhood, you could do that as well. Anything you can imagine is possible. Everything is canon. There's no having to adapt things. It's already adapted. So the limitless storytelling potential, the meta multiverse, that showcases a flexibility of aesthetic and a desire to expand and to adapt to new settings and styles. There you go. Infinite scaling. How about this? Forward-looking approach to games. Yeah, forward-looking approach to games. Endless and eternally fun. Even when you get to the level of deific power, there's still more to say. There's more to do. I think the greatest example of a character doing something is at level, when you have a modifier that brings you up to level 1 quintillion in athletics, for example. You could roll to see if you can successfully punch somebody in the face so hard it incites the next big bang. That kind of thing. All of that is possible with this game. You don't even have to bend the rules. That's what they're made for. So we are gods. Flexibility of storytelling. How about we write that? Storytelling. And I'm going to clean this up, really focus it, refine it over some revisions and everything. This is mostly to give you an update on what I've been doing. I got a quote here from the manual itself. It says, "The players should feel like they have agency at the table, like their actions matter, like they wield the power of gods, because they do." And I think that's a great example of my philosophy to the game. My approach to it is like, we shouldn't be creating systems that limit us in our imagination. I understand that D&D is fun, but the majority of the especially fun times that I've had in the game haven't been due to people using the abilities in a certain way. It's been due to people just abandoning the abilities, abandoning the rules, questioning the wording and how everything works, coming up with ideas that when I first started and people did this, I tended towards not allowing that kind of thing because that made it feel more comfortable, that made it feel more manageable. But then over time, I started realizing that, especially in that format, I have the ability to adapt. If, for example, one of the players wants to use a reaction to throw another player into a tree, they could have gotten into the tree themselves, by the way. That's fine. What kind of impact does that have on the game experience? So always pulling into question how the game can be played is a big thing of that. Oh yeah, my friend is reminding me of. I also made some homebrew content where I make up rules basically, and one of them was a character sheet that is very dear to quite a few of the players for the Etherean raccoon. I decided while I was making that one that one of the reactions that it would have, the only reaction it has, I think, is to hiss at things. Because that makes sense. I think it's more fun to allow what makes sense and what people come up with than it is to be the arbiter of the rules, to use logic and the false authority of the past to determine what can be possible. People do that too often, I think, in my opinion. So, of course, because that's my opinion, I have to try to do the opposite. Which actually, that resulted in We Are Gods, so I'm not upset about it. That's actually pretty cool. I'm glad that happened, even though it's very frustrating sometimes. Oh, well, if you're close, you understand. From far away, yes. Limitless storytelling potential. How about that? Okay, so I think overall, I want to bring attention to how I utilize game mechanics and structure to make anything possible. That's really what I want to do, because one thing that I really like, especially with my experience of making video games, is questioning the rules and the system and what is possible, to come up with new ways to use what already exists and new things that can exist. So We Are Gods, just going through all of that, because that's been going on for 3 years now, since close to 4 years now, actually, since I had the idea to make it. It took me 3 years to come up with the idea, and then a couple days to write it down. Most of that was figuring out what didn't need to be there. So I just got rid of a lot of rules. I remember there's been so many people who have stopped by my little window and disappeared into their own lives, I suppose, into whatever's next, which has been challenging. But there was one person who did actually make video games, who was very familiar with coding and was working on a video game of their own. Of course, they were very interested in game design, so I showed them an old version of We Are Gods. They found it to be very interesting, and I hope they used that information. I was a little worried at first, because I was like, well, I haven't actually published this, so nobody knows that it's my idea, and if I give them my idea before I give it to people, then they could say that it was that whole thing. Intellectual property management. But I ended up not using any of those ideas. It was way too specific. Perfect for a video game, perfect for a game like Dungeons and Dragons, not good for We Are Gods. Yeah, I hope they're doing well. They disappeared and never reached out again. So many people do that. I think it's the capitalist paradigm, but who knows? Well, I guess I'm the closest to knowing, or maybe they could. Anyway, we have We Are Gods. Infinite scaling. Endlessly and eternally fun storytelling. You can play campaigns with this game. Going through the meta multiverse, going into your favorite worlds, your favorite games, your favorite stories, taking on adventures. You could do anything, which is where I found the most excitement and the most passion in the TTRPG community. It wasn't for the published content. Maybe it was just because of the people I hang out with, but very rarely did somebody say, I want to play this new book they released exactly as it's written, according to the rules. Nobody ever said that. With We Are Gods, literally anything is possible. You can be anyone. You can be anything. You can be anywhere. You can do anything. So I want to try to capture that and the experience. Maybe I'll write more about the experience of getting here, but those are the highlights that I want to do. I want to use this to try to show that I'm aware of what it's like to play a game. I know what it's like to have a relationship with the game itself, not just the events or the stories or the mechanics, but the overall experience of a game as a player. And how what I prefer, what I favor, is giving a sense of power to those players, helping them have fun and pursue their ideas. A recent example was of that not happening was in a video game where it was scripted for a horrible thing to happen. It happened, obviously, because it was scripted. And I continued along the story, and I was like, okay. So they've done this thing where a terrible outcome is inevitable, no matter what you do. It must be for a good reason. Let's follow this along. Let's see where these characters go and whether they're doing what they're doing is necessary. As it turns out, I don't believe it was. I think it would have been just as easy to come up with another solution, another scenario. It would have given the players a much better feeling of control, of agency, of strength, of comfort, of confidence, without adding a ton to the actual making of the game. Because that, I think, is a huge concern when you're putting together a team to make a video game, is everything is so interconnected. It's important to balance what it is you want to say with what it takes to say it. So in this particular example, I thought of maybe like 3 different dialogue lines that you could have added, a couple, like maybe changing a script here or maybe another one there. And you could have had a much more enjoyable and engaging player experience. So little things like that, especially with having made video games myself. I'm very aware of how that plays out. And then the other thing, my other big project, The Gravity of Gravity. The Gravity of Gravity is a speculative sci-fi narrative that focuses on a character named Estrella Kai. It is the story of humanity attaining utopia and facing the unknown. It shows that even in an ideal society, we're still going to have dissonance that persists naturally. There's anxiety, there's fear, there's worry. There's so many things. My friend says, it's a bad story decision when there are tens of thousands of people Googling it if there's a way to not get the scripted outcome. Yeah, we looked into it because I was like, because it actually like bugged out a little bit and ended up instigating a combat scenario I was trying to avoid. So we looked into it, and there were like multiple responses and different investigations and inquiries and answers and everything. Like there's so much content on Google to learn that it just is unfortunately unfortunate. Which doesn't have to be the case. Everybody tells me, with We Are Gods, the game where you can't die, a lot of people are saying, well, if you can't die, then what risk is there? You don't have to have mortality as a threat to have a good story. Like in The Gravity of Gravity, Estrella Kai is perfectly fine when gravity pauses for 2 seconds. The world isn't perfectly fine, but it is fine enough. There is no apocalyptic scenario. There's only people wondering what life will be like in a post-physics reality. So yeah, you don't need desperate, impossible conflict to overcome it and tell a good story. It doesn't have to be miserable to be good. You can take a look at Baldur's Gate 3, and you know that miserable is sometimes not good. Everyone I've talked to that has played that game gets toward the end and can't keep playing it They enjoy the gameplay more than they enjoy the story, which is not terribly surprising because that game starts with you having been abducted and being incredibly violated by a mind flayer who, I guess, infects you with a terminal illness. And the only friends you have along the way are other people who are going to die with you. It's awful. It's such a miserable story. The gameplay is really good, though, so there is at least that. The Gravity of Gravity, super intense. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend that as well. That's on patreon.com/Darian Thomas 2. But that one is also free. I think you have to sign up, but you don't have to sign up to pay for it. Hello! That is an interest. I love that collection of letters, hat in tow. That is so cool. Hello and welcome. I hope you're doing well. So yeah, patreon.com/Darian Thomas. That's where you can see the Gravity of Gravity as well. It's a great opportunity to see what a story that isn't miserable, but is still good, sounds like, reads like, feels like, looks like. It's really nice. But in order to make something like that, I had to do so much research. And that's like the main thing that I want to showcase with this one. I had to invent or build upon our current society and our current paradigms, our current world, to invent a utopia. To invent a place where people are, as a default, okay. Where okayness isn't gatekept by the capitalists. It's not behind a paywall everywhere you turn, which is exactly why all of this We Are Gods, the Gravity of Gravity, everything I put up is available for free. You don't have to pay for it or anything. I would appreciate it if you did, but I'm not going to keep paying into that structure. It's not sustainable and it's not good. It ruins relationships and it divides people far too much. It's not worth it. So instead, we'll see how it goes. But anyway, all of that research to find tangible advancements in technology and societal structures, I think showcases my attention to detail and my determination to make something relatable enough to be engaging. There are some elements of technology in the book that are so very different from what we're used to. The introduction of admin, a universal artificial intelligence. My friend says, what is utopia like in Gravity of Gravity? If I can ask. You can ask whatever you want. You know, it's open to conversation. I'm here to coexist with you. But it's actually a lot like our world today, except poverty is eradicated. Standard quality of life, guaranteed, is basic but comfortable. There's a unification not only in our social systems, but also our government as well. A government that is designed specifically not only to interconnect people across the world, but also to preserve and to support individual identities, individual and collective identities, through culture and national boundaries. It's really person-centric, and it focuses on support rather than control. As a consequence, and due in part as well to the integration of admin, the universal artificial intelligence that everybody communicates with, people are more emotionally intelligent. They've learned how to calm down. They can interact and interconnect much more effectively than they could before. Because we've seen with the introduction and the development of the internet and the related technologies, we've seen a growing sense of isolation. My thought is that isolation isn't due to replacing human connection, but to discovering and realizing that we have more in common with people who aren't near us than with people who are. There's the existence of online communities, a huge factor in a sense of isolation and a sense of connectedness, that balance between the two. When you find people online that you really like and connect with, well, then the people around you don't seem on the same wavelength. I think that's where the isolation comes from. I think that's where we're feeling it. But yeah, utopia in the gravity of gravity is a place where people have calmed down and they've learned to care for each other and for themselves in a much, much more efficient and effective way. Outside of that, it's not, utopia is not eradicating capitalism. It's using it differently. So the default is support. And then you can improve your quality of life on your own through working a job and pursuing innovation. Pretty much anything you can do today, you can still do in utopia, except everyone's okay. That's like the big thing. And the communication between the individual and the government that represents them is much more direct than it is today, too, because today we have elected representatives who can't know our individual realities. They're met with spreadsheets and statistics and people's opinions of numbers they've gathered. And then they make decisions based on their life experiences and the assumptions that they've collected along the way. In the gravity of gravity, there's a direct line between you and your representative and the higher levels of government as well. Through the integration of conversational artificial intelligence. So the world is more interconnected in quite a few different ways. So I want to talk about that in my resume as well. Maybe not get into all of that detail, because I do want to make it, like an overview kind of efficient thing, like why I'm good for this particular endeavor. So research is going to be a good one, and imagination for something better / greater. How about that? Always imagining and inventing the future. How about that? My friend says, wow, that's interesting. What is your author name? My name is Darian Thomas, which I have up here, patreon.com/Darian Thomas. I'm sure I can make that a little bigger as well. I have it on this screen. Blast you with some music. I put that there because I'm going to take a break soon. But anyway, it's just my name. Just my name. Which I tried to get Twitch set up with my actual name, but somebody else has it, so I can't actually use it. But yeah, on top of all of that, right? On top of creating a speculative future, on top of inventing tangible advancements in technology and societal structures and paradigms, I have also explored a metaphysical crisis. When you take something that we consider to be undeniably true, the existence and the persistence of gravity, and you make it untrue, if only for a brief moment, we are faced immediately with the vast unknown. And we all have to explore it together. That's what the story is about. When the foundations of your understanding are shaken, when the collective, every person, has to deal with something like this, how do we navigate it? The book is basically saying, if we deal with what we have now and we take steps to improve it, when we get to something as big as gravity pausing, where it's not the end of the world. It's not the end. It's not worldwide riots. It's not anything like that. It's not an apocalypse. It's just another thing to figure out together. So that's what the gravity of gravity is about. The protagonist writes in her journal in part of it, and she says, there's something that needs to be said, to be shared, to be seen. Maybe my window is small. Maybe compared to the totality of the human experience, these words capture very little. And yet, I get the sense that the true gravity of the gravity event is seen most fully on this level, in the stories and ideas that manifest within each person, in the reactions to and consequences of confronting the unknown. And I think that really captures the vibe of the book really well. It's that individual experience, going back to what we had in the Multiverse of Aether section, where we had hundreds of NPCs with discrete and unique perspectives and beliefs and personalities and all of that. We have that in the Gravity of Gravity, except on a much deeper level. So these 3 projects, I have other ones I'm not going to get into. I'm just trying to make an overview, an outline, trying to put together a resume so that people know that I would love to write with them or for them, whatever the case may be. I don't have connections or insight or anything into industries or anything like that. But I do have a lot of very specific experience with infinite storytelling, with game design, with working on a team to create something new. All of these things have put me in the perfect situation to help create. And this video, this stream, whatever it might be at the time that you watch it, is exactly that. A step towards sharing that information, towards letting you know I would love to help. I would love to go on a journey with you. But before we get to related experience, I'm going to go ahead and take a break because it's been an hour and I haven't had much water. I'm going to go over some of this stuff and then I'm going to play guitar for you a little later on as well. I'll play a song that I wrote. I think you'll like it. My students have been loving it, so I'm going to do that. But in the meantime, I'll be right back. I wanted to listen to the song again, so I let it play the whole time. Anyway, hello. I hope you're doing well. At this midpoint, may I remind you to drink some water, to eat something if you're hungry, if you can, to take care of yourself, because you deserve it. An important thing to remember. And yes, I did have some water a second ago. Gonna have some more just now. Okay. All that said, we'll get back to this whole situation. So we have my projects. I'll read the overview again in case you missed it. The overview of my resume. I exist on the frontier of thought, where speculation meets reality and the infinite becomes tangible. I am a creator of multiverses, and through tales of transcendence, have connected them in the endless meta space. I have looked within and beyond our assumed limitations to design games and stories that help my friends and fellow travelers traverse what was once thought to be impossible. And, after realizing my experiences have made me well equipped to do so, I'd like to join your journey. That's how it opens. Well, with contact information, and then it opens with that. Anyway, the Multiverse of Aether, infinite collaborative storytelling with... so I've been wanting to do a calculation, but I've not taken good enough records. I think it's got to be over 1,000 hours of content, at least, right? I don't know. I'll figure it out one day, probably. Let's see. We Are Gods, game design, player agency, the gravity of gravity, world building detail, character development. All of these things come together. For related experience, I talk about 3 things. So 1, I've been a professional GM for a while. I still am, technically, just not in the public space. That was really tiring. And confronting the capitalist paradigm so often and so thoroughly was very exhausting, especially given how I approach situations in relationships. I think every connection that is made is immensely valuable, and that every person is undeniably beautiful. And so when I say you are my friend, that is true, and you are always welcome. That isn't how everyone operates, I've learned. Learned kind of the hard way, unfortunately. But anyway, professional GMing, game design and coding, because I have made video games as well. I taught myself how to do that. I taught myself how to GM professionally as well. I also taught myself how to play guitar, but I did study music in college, so there is that. My life has meandered quite a lot to bring me to this point where I'm telling infinite stories of meta multiverses and creating games. The perfect alignment of things. I really hope the person who would benefit from our collaboration is able to find this and able to work with me, because I just would love to do that. I would love that. Okay, so professional GMing. Weekly 3-hour sessions, over 1,000 hours. That is brand new, unique content every week. Multiple Aether multiverses. The benefit of that one is diversity of consequence, I guess, right? Because not every group is going to do the same thing, even if you were to work exactly from a book, which I don't do. I have to reverse engineer a book. Everybody keeps telling me to write it down, but it's like asking somebody to write a history textbook. That's a lot to do. Diversity of consequence and ability to adapt to player decisions, which is redundant. I did have that earlier, so I might rephrase that. And then there was combining Monday and Tuesday. In the public GMing space, relationships typically aren't very deep. I have found that people paying to be part of a game aren't necessarily or even usually there to be your friend. They're there to get an experience, to receive a service, to do what they want, to get what they want out of it, which is fair. Fine. That is how capitalism does things, and that's exactly what we're participating in. But because of that, there are many, many divergences. Also because life is chaotic and ridiculous, and if you're paying for a game, that's discretionary income that you might need elsewhere at certain points. Divergence, huge part of public GMing. But because of that, in order to keep up the stories that are being told, I've had to combine stories. I've had to combine groups to bring them together. And most recently, I combined the Monday and Tuesday groups into a single multiverse. In order to do that, I had to invent and understand, to a deep degree, the meta space between realities, where you might consider the universe to be the totality of your reality. And then someone suggests the idea of a multiverse, another plane of existence, something beyond the boundaries of what we know to be real. And then, of course, there's the meta-multiverse, where everything that could be possible, everything within everything is also within something else. I had to understand this layered storytelling, this layered world building to such a degree that I could create characters. I created the curator, an NPC omniscient, effectively, and existing between realities, between multiverses, aware of them all. And then I had to play that character, so that was a lot. It went well. If anybody happens to wonder, it did go well. But writing these two together, I had to come up with a transition between each reality to converge them. So understanding how to do that, the consequences of it, that's like the main thing. Is like I'm really good with understanding what the narrative and emotional and societal, I guess, consequences of a certain action or a certain idea or even a little detail could be. Because, being a professional GM, I have definitely learned that you got to be careful what you put in front of players, because if you they'll pick up on the most random things, and that'll be like what we do now. So I know like the potential of each little detail. I know it's incredible what is possible. And it's always beyond what you think is until you think anything is, but then you have to understand how to navigate the meta multiverse to get to that point. But anyway, I have a quote from a review on my public GMing profile. It says, "Darian is a really great GM, especially for beginners like myself, in my opinion. They're patient and always willing to walk you through new mechanics that can come up as you level up or come across a new encounter in game. Their homebrew world is full of life, color, amazing rep, and engaging characters, both good and nefarious. They're also willing to try new things to shake up the game, and it always leads to some very memorable moments." One of my favorite reviews. I am deeply grateful for feedback. Just having a little window into the impact that I have on the lives around me is so valuable. It's a kindness to exist, first of all, but then to put it into words is so incredible. So combining Monday and Tuesday, understanding multifaceted storytelling in the context of infinite potential. Because that was another thing. When you think of combining multiverses, when you invent the meta-multiversal space and you populate it with ideas, you not only have to understand how to do that, you also have to realize that anything is possible. Anything could be the thing that you go with. It's a level of discernment that brings you to a good thing. Whether it's the right thing or not, matter of opinion. So is whether it's good or not, but still. Something that you resonate with, something that you like. That is a whole skill in itself. Understanding what a meta multiverse is impressive on its own. but understanding, or rather navigating that, exploring it with intention is a whole other thing. Just like being able to play guitar and being able to teach guitar. You can be an excellent player, but not necessarily a good teacher. You can also be a good teacher, but not necessarily an excellent player, which I think is about the realm that I fall in. I've everything I know on guitar, I taught myself. I've never had a lesson or anything. So that's the other thing that I do. I write, I run games, and I teach music. So I'll play that song for you in a second. The next thing is my experience with game design and coding, because I have coded and worked with a dialogue system in a video game RPG. I remember my favorite part of it was I made a bug that I accidentally wrote in, a feature of that particular encounter, where I think I must have forgotten a semicolon or something. I can't quite remember. This was a while ago. I forgot to put in something, and it meant that the sprite for the NPC was constantly rotating very quickly. Its animation speed was higher than it should have been, and it didn't have any conditions on it, so it was just rotating in place very, very quickly. So I went to go interact with it, which I don't know. That seems like a bad idea, but it worked out pretty well, actually. I went over to him, and the dialogue box popped up, and he stopped. He froze, looking at me, and I was like, okay, we might be able to work with this, actually. So I set it up so that you can talk with this NPC. By default, they're spinning around very quickly in place. And when you go to talk to them, you have like dialogue options that are like, hey, how are you? Why are you spinning? A couple other things like that related to like the little quest I put together. And if you ask why they're spinning, they're just like, why not? Why not? So I spent some time thinking about like, okay, if I were an NPC in this situation, if I were this person who just spins constantly, what would I say about it? So instead of saying, oh, let me fix that and making it more traditional, I instead was like, okay, how can I make this like a thing now? And how can I make it feel natural? How can I make it make sense? I showed it to my friend. I don't have access to it anymore because, I didn't study coding, and then the program I was using had an update that made it incompatible, and it was supposed to automatically fix it, but it didn't, and then I lost access to it over time. But yeah, I showed it to my friend at the time, and he thought it was hilarious. He thought it was so much fun. That's as good a review as I got. I don't know. I wish I had proof, but that's how that played out. So I made dialogue system in an RPG. I'll mention the spinning guy and knowledge of dialogue mechanics, because I also became aware of how you can tie dialogue decisions to game mechanics as well. So actually, I've had a lot of ideas for video games, especially around conversational type gameplay, directly relating to this interconnectedness between the conversations and the actual gameplay of the game itself. Like one idea I had was for a game to begin with a conversation, and then the game that you play actually is determined by the choices you make in the conversation. So one example was like, you find yourself in somebody's room. They have all these little details in their environment, and you have the option to ask about certain ones. As you go through the conversation, you actually are sharing information by choosing certain things about what you like, what you're interested in, what resonates with you. And then the details of the game that you get to after the conversation ends are determined by the things that you like. So it's kind of like a I guess kind of like a personality test, and then you have a custom video game. And it's all like, I have it mapped out in my head too. I could write it down if I really needed to, but yeah. Let's add to this knowledge of dialogue mechanics and their connection to world building and gameplay. The other thing that I managed to do while I was deep in the game coding stuff was I actually invented some of my own systems. So power-ups and priority, what's the best way to put it? Priority selection, I guess. Structure. How about that? We'll throw that word in there too, and then I'll turn this into something later. But if you want to see the final resume, I'll be putting that on Patreon as well, because, I don't know, I don't know what people like looking at, but if I make something, I'll put it somewhere you can look at it. How about that, just to be safe? So I have that going on. I also have, I did some quest design based on game mechanics is like a big part of it, because when you go into a scenario where you have like an idea for a video game, or you already have the video game created, like for creating mod content, the thing that you can do, or maybe even the thing that you have to do at that point, is learn or invent ways to use the mechanics in interesting ways, rather than doing the same thing 1,000 times. Fetch quest, for example. You can start creating scenarios that are unique, but also relatable to the story and the context and the world and everything involved in the game. Which I have played around with in a few different situations, like with the professional GMing and with my game designing and coding and stuff. We got a lot to do with that. The other thing that I don't know if I need to mention this, but I really want to. I made virtual instruments with original code. It was a synthesizer and loop launcher. So you could actually pause, stop, reset, play from a catalog of loops, and you could also perform a synthesizer that adapted to the loops that you chose. So they're like different songs, and then you have different parts. You can have different sections, and it turned your keyboard into something like a like one of those Ableton Live controllers, where like you press Q and that'll set up a new drum pattern to start on the downbeat of the next repeat, and then you can play around with it. So it actually got to be really fun, and I do have a copy of one of those. I do have that available. So maybe I'll put that out there on the internet as well. That's actually not a bad idea. So that's just, all of that to say, I have experience with creating games, video games specifically as well. And I spent that time pushing the boundaries of what I thought were boundaries, I guess, right? Ultimately creating my own inventions and creating my own stories. And then I also have music, which I'm adding because I feel like that's really good for showing that I have a well-rounded approach to storytelling. Because composition, you're listening to a piece I made now. There's a piece in the beginning and at the midpoint that I wrote as well. And I'm going to play a song for you that I wrote on guitar as well. But that's just understanding the emotional impact of sounds and elements, which translates to story points, details, and outcomes, really. Yeah. Having a good outcome to a game is so important. Going back to what I was saying earlier about having that one thing that clearly a lot of people wanted to, having that to be impossible. While I can see where that decision came from, it's, I feel like it was a missed opportunity. Performance as well. Practice. Practice. Dedication, group dynamics, and what else is relevant from performance? Expression. All of those are so important in making and reciting and sharing and all of these things, with stories, with songs, everything. Now teaching, completely different skill set. Composition, performance, and teaching, all very different things. So teaching, really the main thing is communication, the translation of ideas. And understanding techniques and mechanics well enough to, I guess, help students grow comfortably at that. So that's kind of a big thing as well. So the related experience, really I just want to use this section to show how getting into a new environment, a new writing style, a new approach to all of the things that I'm already doing wouldn't be a massive obstacle for me. I have related experiences. I have things that have set me up perfectly to be dropped into a situation and to navigate it as if I was already ready for it. With all of these things going on, especially improv. Maybe I'll put that in a separate thing. But yeah, I think that really, maybe I'll have like a outro. I don't know what I'll write for that, but I'm going to write that down anyway. Outro / summary again. And then I'll write something for that. And then I think that might be everything I put in my resume. I think that's it, really. I'll read the overview again because every time I read it, it sounds more and more accurate. I exist on the frontier of thought, where speculation meets reality and the infinite becomes tangible. I am a creator of multiverses, and through tales of transcendence have connected them in the endless meta space. I have looked within and beyond our assumed limitations to design games and stories that help my friends and fellow travelers traverse what was once thought to be impossible. And, after realizing my experiences have made me well equipped to do so, I'd like to join your journey. Oh man, I'm excited for this. I'm excited for having it, fully designed and completed, everything making more sense, a little more refined and focused. I'm excited for that, and I'm excited to send it to people because I think it would be so cool to get something like this. To get even, you're looking for somebody to hire, or maybe you aren't, but you have a need that could be filled by somebody with this skill set. And it starts off with, I exist on the frontier of thought, where speculation meets reality and the infinite becomes tangible. If I could hire somebody and they sent me that, I would definitely look into it some more, because that sounds incredible. But yeah, maybe I'll do, I am thinking for the future, with this whole streaming thing, I am considering, actually, no, I've decided. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start streaming a game that I found recently, Wildermyth, if you've heard of it. I'm going to start streaming that. I'm very excited for that. It's a game of infinite storytelling potential. That's really been like the main thing recently. And So I'll be starting from the very beginning, creating stories and doing a lot of reading, because there's a lot of writing in it. A lot of adaptable, custom writing that changes based on the character decisions you make. That kind of thing. I would be perfect for that. But the studio that made it, last I saw, is no longer creating content for it. But I thought it was such a good idea and well executed too. There are some bugs in the console edition that kind of make a couple things a little weird, but other than that, brilliant game, and I would love to share it with you. So going to be doing that. I might even start that up tomorrow. I'll have to look at some things and let you know, but follow along here on Twitch, twitch.tv/musical mercenary. And you'll get if you have it active anyway, you'll get the notifications. I also am going to be posting all of that to YouTube, which is YouTube.com/Darian T, as DARRIANT. And I guess I could put that here. Maybe I'll choose a larger font. So we got twitch.tv/musical mercenary and YouTube. Actually, I don't know what the link is, but on YouTube, you can find me at Darian T. And then, of course, we have patreon.com/Darian Thomas. That's where you can find We Are Gods. The Multiverse of Aether has some content on there, and all of the Gravity of Gravity is available. You can find it there for free, or you can sign up to support me, which would make all of this so much easier to pursue. And I don't think there's a word that captures the gratitude I would experience. The gratitude mirrors my love for every moment, and my appreciation of you. So if you haven't heard it before, I'll say it now. I'll say it anyway, whether you have or not. Thank you for existing. I'm very, very happy to coexist with you. Very glad that we're on this journey together. And I look forward to our next conversation. I think that's going to be it for today, but I don't know. Let's go ahead and listen to that song again. Why not? And I'll see you next time. There we go. Didn't even play that song for you. Can you believe it? How silly of me. Okay. Well, here we go. I think I got everything ready, so I'll play it. Slightly out of tune, but I like the character. Oh yeah, it goes over here. Hopefully you heard that. I realized that I told you something, but you couldn't hear me because I had already muted my microphone. Absolute mess trying to keep track of all of this, but thank you for your patience. I'm glad I remembered. Again, thank you for existing, for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video, this stream, whatever it is to you. I hope you enjoyed it. And now we'll listen to the other song and say goodbye. My friend says, I heard it. It was nice. Perfect. Thank you for the confirmation. Okay, goodbye.